Take a moment and think about your morning. What is the very first thing you do when you open your eyes? Do you reach for your phone, stretch and loosen your body, or perhaps walk straight to the kitchen to prepare a cup of coffee? For millions of people across the globe, coffee is far more than just a beverage. It is a loyal companion at the start of the day, a gentle warmth in cold hands, and a tiny spark that brings the mind to life. Every single day, more than 2 billion cups of coffee are enjoyed worldwide. That means, in almost every second, someone, somewhere, is lifting a warm cup to their lips. Coffee gives us energy, yes, but it also gives us moments. Moments to pause, to think, to talk, and to dream. It brings strangers together in cozy cafes, keeps workers focused in busy offices, and offers comfort in the quiet corners of our homes. It has become the second most traded product on Earth, right after oil. Nations have argued over it, empires have built fortunes from it, and powerful ideas have been born beside steaming cups of it. Yet the most surprising part is this: the creation of coffee as we know it, the roasting, the grinding, the brewing, was never carefully planned. It was not discovered by a royal court or a brilliant scientist. Instead, it began with a handful of lively dotes and one curious man in the highlands of Ethiopia. Yes, goats. And from that simple accident, human history would change forever. So today, let us travel back in time. Let us uncover how one small red berry grew into the world's most beloved drink. This is not merely a tale about coffee. It is a story of curiosity, chance, and the quiet magic behind human discovery. So settle in, relax, and if you like, take a gentle sip from your own cup. This is the accidental majesty of coffee. Before coffee entered the world, life followed a much slower rhythm. People rose with the sun and rested when the moon climbed into the sky. There was no simple way to stay awake late into the night, no easy trick to sharpen the mind when the body grew tired. As darkness fell, work ended, and rest began. The common drinks of those days were plain and limited: water, milk, and wine. Water was often unsafe to drink. Milk spoiled quickly under the hot sun. Wine and beer were common, even at breakfast. They soothed the nerves and relaxed the body, but they also made people heavy, sleepy, and slow. There was nothing that could keep a person alert and focused for long hours. In the deserts and towns of Arabia and North Africa, daily life was demanding. The days were scorching, the nights stretched endlessly, and work never truly stopped. Merchants, travelers, and scholars often stayed awake deep into the night. For some, like the devoted Sufi monks, remaining awake was a sacred act. They spent the quiet hours in prayer and reflection, seeking closeness to God when the world was silent. But even their strong spirits needed support. They searched for something that could hold their eyelids open and keep their thoughts clear. At that time, people were already familiar with small red berries that grew on wild bushes. Some chewed them for a quick burst of energy. Others crushed them and mixed them with animal fat to form dense food balls for long and tiring journeys. But no one imagined that the tiny seed hidden inside those berries, what we now call a coffee bean, would one day transform the world. It was simply another plant in the wilderness, ordinary and overlooked. Humanity was waiting for something new, something that could calm the body while awakening the mind. They needed a drink that offered clarity without drunkenness, energy without chaos. All it required was one observant soul, one curious heart to notice what everyone else ignored. Our story begins in the lush green highlands of Ethiopia more than 1,000 years ago. There lived a young goatherd named Kaldi. He was a humble man with a simple life. Each morning he guided his goats into the hills where they grazed freely among wild plants and flowers. He cared deeply for his animals and understood their habits and moods better than anyone. But one afternoon, something unusual caught his attention. His goats were leaping and bounding with strange excitement. They ran in circles, kicked their legs into the air, and refused to settle down. Their eyes sparkled, their movements were restless, and they seemed filled with endless energy. Kaldi watched them in amazement, wondering what could have caused such behavior. He soon noticed they had been nibbling on bright red berries from a nearby shrub, and in that moment, without knowing it, Kaldi stood at the doorway of a discovery that would echo through centuries. Kaldi was surprised. They had never behaved like this before. He followed them and saw that they were eating small red berries from a dark green bush. Curious, Kaldi picked some berries and tasted them himself. Soon he felt awake, excited, and full of life. Kaldi thought, "These berries are special. They give strength and joy." He wanted to share his discovery, so he took the berries to a nearby monastery. There, he met a monk and told him what had happened. But the monk was afraid. He said the berries were the work of the devil and threw them into the fire. Then something amazing happened. As the berries burned, a rich and beautiful smell filled the room. The monks were surprised by the sweet, warm scent. They pulled the roasted seeds from the fire and crushed them. Then they mixed the powder with hot water. That night, the monks drank the new dark drink and stayed awake through their prayers. That was the first cup of coffee. It was born not from science or invention, but from accident and curiosity. Kaldi's goat started it. A frightened monk continued it, and a simple mistake created something that would change the world. Sometimes the greatest discoveries begin with an open mind and a small, curious heart. The story of Kaldi and the monks was only the beginning, but coffee's real journey, the one that shaped our world, began hundreds of years later. The little beans traveled across the Red Sea, from Ethiopia to Yemen. There, in the 1400s, coffee found its true home. In Yemen, a group of holy men called Sufis began to use coffee. They needed something to help them stay awake during long nights of prayer. They discovered that when the beans were roasted and brewed, the drink became stronger and more delicious. It gave them energy, focus, and peace. At first, they didn't have machines or tools. They roasted beans in small metal pans over an open fire. They listened carefully to the tiny crackling sound. They smelled the air to know when the roast was perfect. It was art, not science, a patient process made by heart and hand. Sometimes the beans burned. Sometimes the drink was too bitter or too weak. But the Sufis didn't stop. They kept trying again and again. With every mistake, they learned something new. They discovered that the longer the roast, the deeper the flavor, that heat could unlock the heart of the bean. Soon, word of the drink spread beyond the monasteries. Traders, travelers, and scholars began to try it. They called it kahwa, meaning the drink that gives strength. People drank it to study, to pray, to work, and simply to feel alive. For the first time, there was a drink that sharpened the mind instead of dulling it. The drink became part of their spiritual life, and then their daily life. In small clay pots over open fires, people began to brew coffee everywhere, at home, in markets, and in mosques. It was no longer just a discovery, it had become a tradition, a ritual, a way to share time and conversation. The journey of coffee was a journey of patience and faith. No one invented it in a lab. It was shaped by centuries of small experiments and quiet devotion. The monks and Sufis only wanted to stay awake to pray, but in doing so, they awakened the world. For centuries, coffee was a drink of monks and mystics. But one day, something changed. Coffee left the quiet walls of the monastery and entered the busy streets of the city. It was no longer only a drink for prayer, it became a drink for people. In the 1500s, coffee reached the city of Mecca, one of the great centers of the Islamic world. People there loved the taste, the warmth, and the energy it gave. Soon, small places opened where men could gather, sit together, and drink. These were the world's first coffee houses. Inside these places, the air was full of conversation and laughter, the smell of coffee mixed with the sound of music and debate. People talked about business, poetry, and politics. They played games, told stories, and shared dreams. The coffee house became a new kind of space, open to ideas, open to people. One writer at that time said, "In Mecca, people drink kahwa and gather in great numbers. They talk of their affairs and stay awake without distress." It was true. Coffee gave people the power to stay awake, but also to think, to imagine, to create. This was the real breakthrough. Coffee was no longer just a drink. It was a movement. It changed how people worked, how they met, and how they shared ideas. In those small rooms filled with laughter and aroma, modern society began to take shape. Every great invention meets fear, and coffee was no different. When it first spread across cities, not everyone was happy. Some leaders, priests and kings, saw it as dangerous, a drink that could change people's minds. In Mecca, around the year 1511, the governor banned coffee. He said it made people lazy and rebellious. He believed coffee houses were places of gossip and trouble. People who drank too much of it, he said, could forget their prayers. But people loved coffee too much to give it up. They met secretly in small rooms, sharing cups and whispers. For many, coffee was more than a drink. It was freedom. It gave them energy to think, to question, and to dream. When coffee reached Europe, it caused even more debate. Some church leaders called it the drink of the devil. They said it came from Muslim lands and should be forbidden to Christians. But then, something unexpected happened. Pope Clement VIII decided to taste it himself. After his first sip, he smiled and said, "This Satan's drink is so delicious that it would be a sin to let only the infidels drink it." With that, he blessed coffee, and the people cheered. Still, not all rulers liked this new drink. In England, King Charles II tried to close coffee houses. He said they were full of talkers and troublemakers, but the people protested, and the ban was soon removed. Coffee had won. No law could stop it. It had become a symbol of freedom, of open talk, open thought, and open hearts. Once coffee was accepted, the world began to change. Everywhere coffee went, it brought new habits, new energy, and new ideas. The small drink that started in the mountains of Ethiopia had now reached the hearts of great cities. In Europe, coffee houses became the center of life. They were open to anyone, rich or poor, worker or writer. People paid only 1 penny for a cup, so they called them penny universities, because for the price of a cup, you could learn more than in a classroom. Inside those coffee houses, people talked about science, art, and philosophy. They shared books, argued about politics, and imagined the future. It was in places like these that great changes began. The birth of newspapers, new inventions, and even revolutions. In London, one coffee house became Lloyd's of London, the first great insurance company. Another became the London Stock Exchange. In France, writers and thinkers like Voltaire met to discuss freedom and reason. And in Vienna, musicians found inspiration over cups of dark coffee. But the biggest change was in the morning. Before coffee, people often drank beer or wine with breakfast. It made them slow and sleepy. After coffee arrived, mornings became brighter, faster, and more focused. The world, for the first time, was truly awake. Coffee gave people more than energy. It gave them connection. It turned strangers into friends and silence into conversation. It became a part of culture, of work, and of love. And it continues to shape our days one cup at a time. As the world began to love coffee, something new happened. Coffee started to travel. It crossed oceans, mountains, and empires. What began as a local drink in Ethiopia and Yemen became a global story. The Arabs first kept coffee a secret. They roasted the beans before export so no one could grow them elsewhere. But soon, other nations wanted this treasure too. In the 1600s, the Dutch managed to get a few live plants out of Yemen. They began to grow them in their colonies in Java, Sri Lanka, and South America. The French followed. In 1723, a young naval officer named Gabriel de Clier carried a coffee seedling from Paris to the island of Martinique. The journey was long and dangerous, storms, pirates, and thirst, but he kept the plant alive, even sharing his own water with it. From that one seed, millions of coffee trees would one day grow across Latin America. Soon, coffee plantations spread across tropical lands: Brazil, Colombia, Indonesia, and Vietnam. But this growth came with a price. Much of the work was done by enslaved people and poor farmers. Coffee brought wealth to some, but hardship to many others. By the 1800s, Brazil became the world's largest coffee producer. Coffee powered its economy. Still, the drink itself never stopped growing in popularity. Factories began roasting and grinding coffee on a large scale. The world wanted coffee, at home, at work, everywhere. In the 20th century, new inventions changed everything again. The espresso machine in Italy created a faster, stronger, richer coffee. Later came instant coffee, which made the drink available to soldiers, workers, and busy people everywhere. Coffee had become not just a drink, but a symbol of modern life. Today, more than 70 countries grow coffee. It connects farmers in the tropics to office workers in cities, from Sao Paulo to Saigon. Coffee fuels conversations, art, business, and dreams. It has become one of the strongest bridges between cultures, a simple cup that unites the world. Coffee's story is not just about a drink, it is about people, their dreams, their work, and their endless curiosity. From a shepherd and his dancing goats, to monks in prayer, to traders, thinkers, and workers, coffee has touched every kind of life. It began as an accident, but became a symbol of connection. It helped people stay awake, but it also helped them wake up inside, to think, to learn, to create, and to share. Every cup carries centuries of history and the warmth of human hands. Writers have called it the fuel of the mind. Artists have said it helps ideas bloom like morning light. And maybe that is true. Coffee gives us more than energy. It gives us focus, hope, and rhythm. It is the pause between chaos and creativity. Today, when you sit with your cup in a quiet morning or a busy cafe, you are part of this long human story, a story born from curiosity, patience, and the will to stay awake in a sleeping world. From fire and berries to machines in cafes, coffee reminds us of what humans do best: turn something small and ordinary into something that changes the world. So, next time you take a sip, remember this journey. A journey that began with goats, crossed oceans, inspired revolutions, and now lives in your hands. Because the story of coffee is also the story of us.